updates on the US and the Paris Agreement, we know that countries have their nationally determined contributions, so the NDCs are sort of objectives for countries, objectives in a multilateral set for countries or private sectors who want to invest in countries. They need to be known, the NDCs, countries need to be clear with the projects that they want, and that's the only way that you can secure financing. FC, EBRD, EIB, all of these international partners are ready to finance private sector in the energy transition.
It seems to be a buzzword, and various investments coming into that sector. Green steel. So I think, at least from India's context, is to set the policy straight. Yes, there are some subsidies required, but it's not over and beyond the physical challenges that any state or the federal government would have. That's one part. But the second part again is how do you make this the transition political resistant or resistant to politics, right? And that's going to be very, very important. So the way we look at it is how can we sell it to our electorate? And as a HRD minister, my focus is how do I create the next set of jobs that we don't even know in exactly which area they're going to come. So working with the industry, working with NGOs, collaborating with them, getting the curriculum, the whole 9 yards, and creating the next wave of jobs, I think is going to be very, very important to make it more resistant.
Thank you so much. I'm being mindful of time, and I'll request one piece, which is this is a conversation. So, if we could have one question, thought, insight from participants. I know there's folks in the back as well. We'd welcome that before we shift on to the next conversation series.
So basically, as we discuss, lots of the focus on mitigation globally as well as in India, and the resources, particularly financial resources allocated for the adaptation are very less. At the same time, communities are facing lots of challenges because of the climate change, and not only this issue is related to just transition, but issue is very bigger. Because of the climate change, lots of people are migrating from one place to another place. And as far as India is concerned, we have about 200 million migrant workers, and many of them migrating because of the climate change. So how we can link the communities also, and basically how we can broadening the just transition definition in that context.
Thank you. I know you had your hand up too. Do you want to just 30 seconds shortly share?
Yeah, well, I would have one question towards you. I found it very interesting when you were saying that creating the new job opportunities, which I think is great and is needed. I'd like to go on the topic of the next generations. We have a massive swift, between the generations that are currently in the power positions and the ones that are coming. And I'll be very honest with you. I am one from these generations. We don't believe many things that are said because it's very often the same thing. It's said. How are you going to tackle this problem of transparency and trust that is really existing towards all of these promises and all of these COPs and WEFs and etc. It's nice, but yeah, we don't see the results. I'm sorry. Don't want to be rude here, but yeah, I'd be interested in that.
I think that's a valid question. Before I come to you, I think the way we're looking at it as a state is how do you incentivize farmers? How do you incentivize households? So can I have a power purchase agreement with them? So whatever energy they don't use, they end up paying that. So under the Honorable Prime Minister's program, Suryaghar, which is rooftop solar for every house, that's the exact PPA, power purchase agreement we're doing with every citizen. And I think that's one of the simple mechanisms that we can create the incentive structure for greater adoption. To be fair, India has seen a rise in energy costs, and for every country to really become a developed nation, low cost of energy is going to be critical. So between solar, wind and pump storage, as of today, I don't know PSP where it will be in the next 5 years, currently is viable. So at about 4 and 5 rupees a unit in Indian rupees, it actually makes sense. So I think tying the entire incentive structure, I think is going to be very, very critical in that sense. Coming to your point, yes, I think a lot of tall promises have been made. The Honourable Minister has also made very clear in the opening remarks. But I think time has come. I mean, look at what's outside. This is probably the greenest Davos that we have seen. It doesn't feel like Davos. Last night, that's the whole discussion we were having. Things are changing. So we have to adapt to it. Otherwise, we will have tougher challenges. And if you look at natural calamities, it is going up. And insurance companies are running out of money. So we have to translate. So I think politicians are to be partially blamed for it, not creating the vibrant ecosystem to enable it. So for me, what's exciting is mind to energy, capturing the entire value of the ecosystem and understanding the role of human resource development, the role of real-time governance in the entire ecosystem. That, I believe, can enable India to leapfrog as a nation. Because we don't have a lot of the legacy issues that other countries have. So we never went through a personal computing phase. We just went to the smartphone phase. So I think this, even in energy, there's a potential to leapfrog. Our grids can be far more robust. And Government of India mindfully is spending substantial amount of money building the entire grid connectivity. And so I think that should solve both sides of the coin, if I may.
I just want to say that adaptation is on the agenda. And for example, one of the outcomes of also COP27 was the Loss and Damage Fund, realizing that desertification and what's happening, because that's in sub-Saharan Africa mainly. But one important aspect is dialogue among countries and also showing success cases where adaptation was taken as a focus, and there were alternative financing tools, like what's happening in Colombia in terms of debt swap agreements, Barbados, the same. So we need to shed light in discussions on what worked, and not just what worked, how did it work? So that can also provide politicians with, in other areas, in other countries, with concrete examples that it's not just a promise, but it has happened elsewhere. What do I need to do to make sure that I can do the same and replicate and scale? So this word scaling we always hear about, is to take a successful example and see how we can. Of course, not one size fits all, but the problems are the same, and when one solution works, why not try to replicate given the initial conditions in the country? In terms of trust, I think that's well said, and it's everywhere. And I think the shocks that are facing us today are more frequent and bigger. And whether it's the fiscal space that is available for countries to be able to take action, which shock should I prioritize given the fiscal, the very tight fiscal space? So it's I mean, the credibility gap that exists can only be narrowed through better communication, and I think that's an element which there's always areas of improvement. There's no best communication. There's always scope to improve the communication. I think social media plays a very big role, and being mindful to the different generations is also important, and including them in the dialogues. I think for COP, there's also the youth dialogue at the COP level, and the different initiatives related to startups and SMEs in the climate space for adaptation. In Egypt, for instance, we have farmers today that are using solar panels to, instead of diesel, for using the water for agriculture. That's a very important example of action for adaptation. And sometimes they're provided with loans at low cost and so forth. So it's communication is very important, shedding light on what works and being very honest on what doesn't work and what we cannot do.
Great. On that note, thank you so much. This was deeply insightful. After yesterday, I think the one thing I do take away is the commitment towards energy transition remains strong. And while there are turbulent times coming up, I'm pretty confident that we'll be okay.